I went back and listened to Joe Biden's speech in Georgia. The devil went down to Georgia. And here was Biden railing about segregation. He was railing about the specter of segregationist George Wallace, the originator of the notorious phrase, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And Biden left the clear impression that these segregationists could all be found in the Republican Party. And his idea was, let's not continue this horrible Republican tradition of segregation. Now, Biden didn't say all that, but he implied it. And he did name specifically the segregationists, and he named Wallace in particular. But what he didn't tell you is that the segregationists were his buddies. Biden earlier in his career boasted that he knows these guys. They were great guys. He worked with them. He found common cause with them. They actually regarded him as a kind of protege. So interestingly, all of this has now become erased, not just with Biden himself doing it, but with the media sort of colluding in it. And what Biden also didn't tell you is that the segregationists were Democrats. And this goes all the way back to the aftermath of the Civil War. The very people, the Brennan Center has put out a long list of, civil rights bills that were blocked by segregationists. But again, the Brennan Center, this left-wing organization, doesn't tell you that those segregationists were Democrats. They were Democrats to the core. There's virtually one or two examples of a segregationist Democrat who became a Republican. Strom Thurmond is an example of one who did, but when Thurmond became a Republican, he wasn't promoting segregation at all. Now, what about George Wallace? Well, George Wallace was a Democrat. He was a segregationist. He briefly left the Democratic Party to run as an independent. He thought it might be a better way for him to try to get to the presidency. But when that failed, interestingly, he didn't become a Republican. He went right back to the Democratic Party, and he stayed a Democrat until his death. So this is the point, that you get the false teaching here and the false implication from the left that these segregationists became Republicans. And the fact of the matter is the vast, vast majority of them stayed loyal Democrats right into their graves. So Democrats have been the party of voter suppression. And I want to argue that they're doing it now. They haven't stopped doing voter suppression. Just the mechanism of voter suppression is different. Before, it used to be, let's stop blacks from voting. And the way we do that is we impose, poll taxes on them, or we unleash the Ku Klux Klan on them so that they are terrified and don't want to be seen at the polls because they know there are going to be people who are going to be noting that they were there, who will then do a night ride and beat them up at night. So this was their old strategy. Their new strategy is, in a sense, to try to make it easy for people to vote unlawfully and thus cancel out legal votes. So this is a new, different strategy for voter suppression. But let's remember, this is voter suppression all the same. When aliens, not just illegal aliens, even legal aliens aren't allowed to vote, if legal aliens or illegal aliens vote, if underage students vote, if ineligible felons vote, if persons who haven't voted, moved out of state vote, all these people are canceling out lawful votes. That is voter suppression. Now, although the Democrats say they're really worried that there are minorities and poor people who can't vote, think about this. Have they ever produced a single case of a person who goes, I was really trying to vote in Mississippi, I was really trying to vote in Georgia, but I just couldn't. I was faced with all kinds of obstacles. How many cases of this have you seen on the news or in the media? Not a single one. Why? Because the Democrats can't produce a single case. Not one.
Everybody
so
can get an ID.
Anyone can get an ID, but no one's stopping anyone from voting. I mean, that's the point. So when the Democrats talk about attacks on democracy and so on, you have to view this kind of skeptically with a little bit of jaundice. See, here's Jennifer Rubin, this is the most sycophantic journalist in America. Basically, all Biden has to do is pull down his diapers, and there's Jen Rubin ready to do the needful. Well, my point is Jen Rubin will change her position depending on she's just absolutely slavish in her devotion. It's almost comical. She's sort of like a battered wife who keeps coming back, for more. And here's Jen Rubin. Democracy's fate rests with two stubborn senators whose sole concern is their standing with conservatives at home. Now let's wait for a minute. What is Jen Rubin accusing Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin of? She's accusing them of being responsive to their own constituents at home. In other words, far from accusing them of violating democracy, they're actually exercising democracy. They are the elected representatives of moderate to conservative states. They're reflecting those sentiments, and Jen Rubin is castigating them for doing that. She wants them to ignore their constituents and go with Joe Biden. She's basically like, Joe Biden's pulled down his diapers. I'm right here. Come on, Joe Manchin. Come on, Kristen Sinema. You join me. And the thing about Biden is that his arguments are unbelievably specious. One of the best examples he could come up with of voter suppression is that, I'll quote him, Georgia won't let you give food to people waiting in line to vote. I'm thinking, wait a minute. You know, we're first of all a nation that has kind of gone massively obese. I mean, you look at all kinds of studies that show that Americans are almost twice the size that they used to be. Is it really true that even if you, let's just say it's a long line, I'm going to have to wait for 2 hours in line. I gotta eat. Really? Is it going to kill you if you don't eat while you're waiting in line? Is it really necessary to ply you with food while you're waiting in line? This is absolutely ridiculous. So, here you've got a president posing as the champion of democracy. First of all, his poll rating is a miserable 33%, so there's some democratic repudiation for you. He's trying to change the Senate rules. These are longstanding Senate rules, part of our system. The filibuster, this is the organization of the Senate, basically says that you need supermajorities. And if not, you can't, so they want to get rid of the filibuster so that a mere majority, and think of it, this is the merest of majorities. They'll have to bring in Kamala Harris to break the tie, and that's supposed to be the true expression of democracy. No. That's not democracy. This is a party with a very narrow claw hold on power, trying to use its window of opportunity to change, to transform the playing field, to unlevel the playing field, you might say, not in order to protect democracy, but in order to undermine it.